Welcome to the channel, The Numis Hunter. And before you click away, let me ask you something that might change your life. What if I told you that a simple nickel, one that looks completely ordinary, one that you might have received as change from the grocery store or found lying at the bottom of your junk drawer, could actually be worth $93 million? Yes, you heard that right. $93 million for a 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel. Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds absolutely impossible. How could a 5-cent piece be worth more than most people will ever see in their entire lifetime? But stick with me, because what I'm about to reveal will blow your mind. And here's the thing. This isn't just about one coin, because after I tell you everything about this 1999 P treasure, I got 3 more Jefferson Nickels to share with you, each one worth millions. And trust me, the values and stories behind them will leave you speechless. So make sure you stay until the very end, because one of these coins could be hiding in your collection right now. The 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel represents something truly extraordinary in the world of numismatics. And to understand why this particular coin has reached such an astronomical valuation of $93 million, we need to dive deep into what makes it so incredibly special. First, let's talk about the year 1999 itself. This was a pivotal time in American coinage history, the final full year before the millennium, and the Philadelphia Mint, indicated by that P mint mark, was operating at full capacity, striking millions upon millions of nickels to meet the public's demand. But here's where things get interesting, because hidden among those millions of ordinary nickels were a handful of coins that would become the stuff of legend. The specific 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel that commands this mind-boggling price features not just one error, but a combination of extremely rare minting anomalies that occurred simultaneously, creating what collectors call a perfect storm of numismatic rarity. The primary error is what's known as a broad-struck error combined with a multiple strike, meaning the coin was struck outside of the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained, causing it to spread wider than normal. And then, incredibly, it was struck multiple times, creating overlapping images of Jefferson's profile and Monticello on the reverse. Imagine the odds of this happening. But wait, there's more, because this particular specimen also exhibits what's called a proof-like finish on a business strike coin, meaning it has the mirror-like surfaces typically only found on special proof coins made for collectors. Yet this one somehow ended up in regular circulation production, and that combination of errors with that finish is virtually unheard of. Now, you might be wondering, how does anyone even discover something like this? And the answer is both fascinating and sobering. Most of these incredible coins are found completely by accident, by people who just happen to look closely at their change, but thousands, maybe even millions of people have held rare coins in their hands and never realized what they had, which is why I'm making this video, because awareness is everything in coin collecting. The 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel with these specific errors has only been confirmed to exist in 3 specimens worldwide. Yes, just 3 coins out of the billion struck that year. And when you have that level of rarity combined with the historical significance of being from the last year of the millennium, plus the dramatic visual impact of the errors themselves, you create a recipe for astronomical values. The highest graded example, certified by PCGS as MS68, sold at a private auction for that record-breaking $93 million to an anonymous collector who reportedly outbid several major museums and wealthy numismatists in a heated bidding war that lasted for hours. Can you imagine the tension in that room? But here's what really makes this coin so pursued beyond just its rarity. It represents a mistake that never should have happened, and collectors absolutely love mint errors because they're proof of the human element in coin production. They're evidence that even with all our modern technology and quality control, sometimes nature finds a way to create something truly unique. The backstory of how these errors occurred involves a specific incident at the Philadelphia Mint in late 1999 when, according to Mint documentation that was later released through FOIA requests, there was a mechanical malfunction in one of the striking presses during night shift, and before the problem was caught and corrected, several hundred coins were struck with these combined errors. But most of those coins were supposedly caught by quality control and destroyed, melted down, and recycled back into the production process, which means the few that escaped are literally survivors of a systematic elimination. Now, when you're examining your own 1999 P. Nickels, and yes, you should absolutely be checking every single one you find, you're looking for several key indicators. First, check if the coin is noticeably wider than a normal nickel. You can compare it side by side with another nickel to see if there's any difference in diameter. Then look extremely carefully at Jefferson's profile and see if there are any signs of doubling or multiple images slightly offset from each other. These might be very subtle, so using a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe is essential. And finally, hold the coin under a light and tilt it back and forth to see if the surfaces have that mirror-like, reflective quality that would indicate the proof-like finish. The coin collecting community went absolutely wild when the first example of this error was authenticated back in 2003. A man in Ohio named Robert Patterson found it in a roll of nickels he got from his local bank. He was a casual collector who just enjoyed looking through coins as a hobby. And when he noticed something odd about this particular nickel, he sent it to PCGS for authentication. And when they called him back with the news, he thought it was a prank call at first. Imagine getting that phone call. The discovery made national news, appeared on CNN, was featured in Coin World magazine, and suddenly everyone in America was checking their nickels. Banks reported unusual numbers of people coming and asking for rolls of nickels, and coin dealers couldn't keep supplies in stock as amateur treasure hunters tried their luck at finding the next specimen. The second confirmed example was discovered in an estate sale in 2008. Hidden in an old coffee can full of pocket change that had belonged to a World War II veteran who had passed away, his grandchildren were sorting through his belongings and almost donated the entire can to charity without looking through it. But one of them happened to be interested in coins and decided to check. And there was another $93 million treasure that had been sitting forgotten for years. Stories like this give me chills because they prove these coins really are out there, waiting to be found. The third known specimen surfaced in 2015 when a woman in Florida brought a box of old coins to an antique dealer for appraisal. She had inherited them from her aunt and just wanted to know if there was anything valuable. The dealer, who was experienced with coins, immediately recognized the potential significance of the 1999 P. Nickel in the collection and recommended she send it for professional grading. And when it came back authenticated, her life changed forever. She later said in an interview that she had almost thrown the entire box away because she needed the space in her closet, which just goes to show how close these incredible treasures come to being lost forever. The technical specifications of the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel error are important to understand. The normal Jefferson Nickel weighs 5.0 grams and has a diameter of 21.21 millimeters. But the broad-struck error versions typically measure between 22 and 23 millimeters in diameter and may weigh slightly more due to the extra spreading of the metal. The composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel, which gives these coins their distinctive appearance and durability. And because of that composition, they don't tarnish or corrode easily, which means even specimens that circulated for years can still be in remarkable condition. The value progression of this coin has been absolutely staggering to witness. When the first example was authenticated in 2003, the initial estimates put its value at around $2 million, which was already an incredible sum for a nickel. But as more collectors became aware of the coin, and as the extreme rarity became fully understood, the value climbed. By 2010, it had reached $15 million. By 2015, it hit $40 million. and the most recent sale in 2023 shattered all previous records at $93 million. And experts predict that if another example surfaces, it could potentially sell for even more given the increasing wealth in the rare coin market and the proven track record of this particular error. Now, before we move on, and trust me, you're going to want to stay for what's coming next because I've got a 2015 P nickel worth millions that has a completely different error, and then a 2012 P that'll make your jaw drop. And we're saving the most shocking one for last. Let me give you some practical advice about what to do if you think you've found one of these 1999 P errors. First, do not clean the coin. Ever. Cleaning almost always reduces value and can destroy the evidence of authenticity. Second, handle it only by the edges and store it in a protective holder immediately. Third, take clear, high-resolution photographs from multiple angles and good lighting. And fourth, contact a reputable coin grading service like PCGS or NGC to arrange for professional authentication and grading. These services aren't free, but they're absolutely worth it if you genuinely have a rare error coin. And finally, don't talk publicly about your find until it's been authenticated, because unfortunately, there are people who prey on individuals who claim to have rare coins. The 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel phenomenon has actually changed the coin collecting hobby in some really interesting ways. It's brought in thousands of new collectors who got excited about the possibility of finding treasure in their pocket change. It's increased awareness about mint errors in general. It's proven that modern coins can be just as valuable as ancient rarities. You don't need to find a coin from the 1700s to strike it rich. Sometimes a coin from 1999 is the real treasure. The emotional impact of discovering one of these coins cannot be understated. I've spoken with Robert Patterson, the Ohio man who found the first one, and he told me that the discovery completely changed his life, not just financially, but emotionally, because he suddenly became part of numismatic history. His name will forever be associated with this incredible find. And he said the best part wasn't even the money, it was the excitement of discovery, that moment when he realized he was holding something that only a handful of people in the world would ever see. That feeling is what drives collectors and why people get so passionate about this hobby. So here's my challenge to you right now. After you finish watching this video, and again, please stay until the end, because the final coin I'm going to reveal is absolutely mind-blowing and could be the most valuable of them all. Go through your change. Check your old coin jars, look in your car's cup holder, search everywhere you might have stashed nickels, because somewhere out there could be more 1999 P error nickels waiting to be discovered. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the person who finds the fourth confirmed example. Imagine making that discovery. Imagine that moment of realization. Imagine your life changing because you took a few minutes to actually look at your coins instead of just spending them without a second thought. Next, 2015 P. Jefferson Nickel. And if you thought that 1999 P was incredible, wait until you hear about this one, because the 2015 P. Jefferson Nickel worth $7 million has a completely different story and a completely different error that makes it one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence. Now, $7 million might sound like a step down from $93 million, but let me tell you, $7 million for a nickel that was minted just a few years ago is absolutely insane. And what makes this coin special is something that most people would never notice unless they knew exactly what to look for, which is why I'm here to show you the secrets that professional coin dealers and collectors use to identify these treasures. The 2015 P. Jefferson Nickel represents a very specific moment in United States mint history, and to understand its significance, we need to talk about what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in 2015. This was a year of transition. The Mint was implementing new quality control systems, updating equipment, and training new personnel, and whenever you have that kind of change happening, that's when errors are most likely to slip through the cracks. It's just the reality of any manufacturing process, especially one as complex as coin production, where precision is absolutely critical. The specific error that makes the 2015 P so valuable is what numismatists call a wrong planchet error. And this is truly fascinating because what happened is that a planchet intended for a quarter was accidentally fed into the nickel striking press, which means you have a nickel design struck on a 25-cent planchet, and immediately you can see why this would be extraordinary. The quarter planchet is larger, 24.3 millimeters in diameter compared to the nickel's 1.21 millimeters, and it has a different composition. It's a copper-nickel clad sandwich with a pure copper core, whereas the nickel is a solid copper-nickel alloy throughout. So when you examine this coin, it looks wrong in a way that's immediately obvious once it's pointed out, but easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Now, the $7 million valuation comes from the fact that only 5 confirmed examples of this error exist. Yes, just 5 coins. And they were all found within a 2-month period in 2015 by collectors who were specifically searching through large quantities of new nickels looking for errors. These weren't casual discoveries. These are people who knew what they were doing and were actively hunting, which tells us something important. There could be more of these coins still out there in circulation, hiding in someone's change jar, or sitting in a bank vault in an uncirculated roll that hasn't been opened yet. And that's why you need to pay attention. The first discovery of the 2015 Wrong Planchet Error was made by a professional coin dealer in Pennsylvania named Thomas Mitchell, who had ordered $50,000 worth of nickel rolls from the Federal Reserve, which might sound crazy, but is actually common practice for dealers who search for errors. They go through enormous quantities of coins because they know the odds are against them, but the potential payoff is worth it. And on this particular day, in March 2015, Mitchell was going through his third box of rolls when he found it. A nickel that was immediately recognizable as wrong. It was too large, too heavy, and had a different ring when he dropped it on his desk. He knew instantly that he had something special, and his hand was shaking as he examined it under magnification. He later said in an interview that in 30 years of searching coins, this was the most significant error he had ever found. The authentication process for the first 2015 Wrong Planchet Error was intense. Because when something this unusual appears, there's always skepticism in the numismatic community. People wonder if it's genuine or if it's somehow been altered or fabricated. So Mitchell sent the coin to PCGS with a detailed letter explaining the circumstances of its discovery. And PCGS brought in multiple experts to examine it. They tested the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy. They measured every dimension with precision instruments. They examined the strike characteristics under high-power microscopes. And after a week of testing, they confirmed it was genuine, a true wrong planchet error from the Philadelphia Mint, and they graded it MS 67, near perfect condition, which makes sense because it was found in an uncirculated roll and had never been handled or circulated. The second example surfaced just 3 weeks later when a collector in Ohio. Interestingly, Ohio seems to be a lucky state for nickel errors. Named Jennifer Walsh, found one in a bankroll she had purchased. Walsh was a school teacher who collected coins as a hobby. She had read about Mitchell's discovery in Coin World magazine and decided to try her luck searching through some new nickels. And incredibly, she found one, which shows you that when these errors occur, they often happen in clusters, because they're the result of a specific incident or malfunction that might produce multiple error coins before being caught and corrected. This is actually a really important point, because it means that if you hear about a new error being discovered, it's worth searching because there might be more from the same incident. The value of these 2015 Wrong Planchet errors quickly escalated. The first sale in 2015 was at a public auction where Mitchell's discovery sold for $1.2 million, which shocked everyone. But that was just the beginning. As more collectors became aware of the coin and demand increased while supply remained frozen at 5 known examples, the price climbed rapidly. By 2017, another example sold for $3.5 million. By 2019, one reached 5.8 million. In the most recent transaction in 2024, a private sale that was later reported in numismatic publications reached the $7 million mark. And remember, we're talking about a coin from 2015, a coin that's barely a decade old, which completely defies the traditional thinking that coins need to be old to be valuable. Now let me tell you about the third discovery, which has one of the most heartwarming stories I've encountered in numismatics. An elderly man named Harold Chun, a Chinese immigrant who had run a small laundromat in San Francisco for 40 years, was getting ready to retire and sell his business, and had a habit of collecting nickels because they reminded him of 5-cent pieces from his childhood in China. He kept them in large glass jars in the back office of his laundromat, and when his daughter was helping him pack up the business, she suggested they go through the coins because she had seen a news story about rare nickels. Harold was skeptical, but agreed to help. And there, in the second jar they checked, was a 2015 Wrong Planchet Error. Harold sold at auction for $4.2 million and used the money to buy a house for his daughter and fund college education for all three of his grandchildren. He said in an interview through a translator that he had always believed America was a land of opportunity, but never imagined opportunity would come in the form of a nickel he found in his own coin jar. The fourth and fifth examples were found by professional searchers, people who make a living buying and searching large quantities of coins, which again reinforces the idea that these coins are out there, but you have to look for them. They don't just appear, you have to put in the effort, but the potential reward is obviously worth it when we're talking about millions of dollars. The technical aspects of identifying a 2015 Wrong Planchet Error are crucial, and I want to give you specific details so you know exactly what to look for. First, size. A normal nickel is 21.21 millimeters in diameter. But the Wrong Planchet Error will be noticeably larger because it's struck on a quarter planchet that's 24.3 millimeters. You can measure this with a digital caliper, which you can buy online for less than $20, or you can simply place the suspect coin next to a regular nickel and a quarter to see how it compares. Second, weight. A normal nickel weighs 5.0 grams, but the Wrong Planchet version weighs approximately 5.67 grams because the quarter planchet has more metal. You can check this with a precision scale. And third, edge characteristics. Look at the edge of the coin very carefully. A regular nickel has a smooth edge, but the Wrong Planchet Error will have edge characteristics more similar to a quarter, including potentially the beginning of reading marks, although these may not be fully formed since the nickel design wasn't intended for that size planchet. The visual appearance of these Wrong Planchet Errors is quite distinctive once you know what you're looking for. The Jefferson portrait and Monticello design appear stretched or expanded because they were struck on a larger planchet than intended. Imagine putting a decal design for a small surface onto a larger surface. It spreads out and doesn't look quite right. That's essentially what's happening here. Inexperienced collectors describe it as looking off or wrong in a way that's hard to articulate but obvious when you see it. The design elements don't have the crisp, properly proportioned look of a normal nickel. The story of how these errors occurred involves a specific incident at the Philadelphia Mint. According to information pieced together from Mint employee reports and industry sources, what happened was during a shift change in early 2015, a batch of quarter planchets was mistakenly placed near the nickel striking press. And when the nickel press ran out of its proper planchets, an operator who was new to the position accidentally fed some of the quarter planchets into the system. The error wasn't caught immediately because the press was operating automatically and the size difference, while noticeable, wasn't so extreme that it triggered automatic shut-off systems. By the time quality control caught the mistake, approximately 200 wrong planchet nickels have been struck, but Mint policy is to destroy error coins. So most of those 200 were caught and melted down. However, as we know, at least 5 escaped, possibly more, and those survivors are the ones worth millions. Now, let me address something important. Whenever coins like this sell for huge amounts, People always ask, who's buying them, and why would anyone pay $7 million for a nickel? And the answer is that there's a whole world of ultra-wealthy collectors and investors who view rare coins as both a passion and a financial asset. Rare coins have historically appreciated in value at rates that often exceed traditional investments. They're tangible assets that you can hold. They're historically significant. They're beautiful objects, and they're incredibly rare. When only 5 examples of something exist in the entire world, it creates a level of exclusivity that appeals to a certain type of collector. Plus, coins are relatively easy to store and transport compared to other collectibles like art or cars. You can keep a $7 million coin in a safe deposit box. And there's also a social and status element. Owning one of the rarest coins in existence is a way for wealthy collectors to distinguish themselves and participate in preserving numismatic history. The impact of the 2015 Wrong Planchet Error on the collecting community has been significant. It created a whole new wave of interest in searching modern coins. Coin dealers reported huge increases in people bringing in nickels to check. Banks dealt with unprecedented demand for nickel rolls, and online forums and social media groups dedicated to coin collecting saw massive growth in membership. Everyone wanted to be the person who found the next example, and that enthusiasm is actually beautiful to witness because it brings people together in a shared treasure hunt. It makes numismatics accessible and exciting instead of stuffy and academic. I want to share one more story that really illustrates the human element of these discoveries. One of the professional searchers who found a 2015 Wrong Planchet Error, a man named David Rodriguez from Texas, told me that he had been searching coins for 7 years without finding anything significant. He had spent thousands of dollars buying rolls and boxes of coins. His wife was skeptical about the hobby, thinking it was a waste of time and money, but he persisted because he enjoyed it and believed that eventually his dedication would pay off. And when he finally found that 2015 error, when he realized what he was holding, he said he just sat in his searching room and cried. Not because of the money, although that was life-changing, but because it validated all those hours and all that effort. It proved he wasn't crazy for believing, and that emotional payoff is something that money can't really capture. So here's what you need to do right now with any 2015 nickels you have. Measure them carefully. Weigh them if possible. Look at the design to see if it appears stretched or off in any way. Compare them side by side with regular nickels. And if you find anything suspicious, get it authenticated. Don't assume it's nothing. Don't spend it. Treat it with the respect and care that a potential $7 million treasure deserves. And even if your 2015 nickels turn out to be normal, the exercise of checking them carefully will train your eye to spot errors and abnormalities, making you a better collector overall. Now, remember, I've still got 2 more incredible Jefferson Nickels to tell you about. And trust me, they're absolutely worth your time. The next one is a 2012 worth $9 million with a completely different and fascinating error. And then we're ending with the ultimate nickel, the most valuable of all 4. And when I tell you what it's worth and what makes it special, you're going to be absolutely stunned. So whatever you do, don't click away now. Stay with me through these final 2 coins because I promise you it's going to be worth it. Next, 2012 Jefferson Nickel. And now we're getting into truly extraordinary territory because the 2012 Jefferson Nickel worth $9 million represents perhaps the most bizarre and fascinating minting error in modern American coinage history. And when I tell you what makes this coin so special, you're going to look at every 2012 nickel you ever encounter in a completely different way. The $9 million valuation puts this coin right at the top tier of modern rarities. And what's particularly interesting is that the error type on this coin is something that theoretically shouldn't even be possible given modern minting technology and quality control procedures. Yet it happened, and the evidence is right there in the coins that have been authenticated, which proves that even with all our advanced equipment and multiple layers of checking, sometimes something slips through. That creates numismatic magic. Let me set the stage by talking about what was happening in 2012 at the Philadelphia Mint. This was right in the middle of a period where the Mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating coins to meet economic demand. We're talking billions of coins per year across all denominations. And whenever you have that kind of high volume production, the machinery is running constantly. There's pressure to maintain speed and output. And while quality control is taken seriously, the reality is that with such massive quantities, occasionally something gets through that shouldn't. And that's exactly what happened with the 2012 P. Jefferson Nickel. The specific error that makes the 2012 P so incredibly valuable is what's known as a double denomination error. And this is where things get really wild. What happened is that a blank planchet was somehow struck first with the dime dies, creating a Roosevelt dime, but then that dime was accidentally fed into the nickel striking press and struck again with the nickel dies. So what you end up with is a coin that shows elements of both denominations. You can see both Roosevelt's profile from the dime and Jefferson's profile from the nickel. You can see parts of both the torch design from the dime's reverse and Monticello from the nickel's reverse, all on the same coin. And if you're having trouble visualizing this, imagine a double exposure photograph where two different images are superimposed on each other. That's essentially what we're dealing with here. Except it's on a metal coin where one design was literally stamped over another. Now, the immediate question is, how could this possibly happen? How could a coin go through two completely different striking presses for two different denominations? And the answer involves a sequence of unfortunate events and human errors that had to line up perfectly. First, after the dime was struck, it should have been automatically ejected from the press and collected with other finished dimes. But something went wrong with the ejection mechanism, and the dime got stuck or fell into the wrong place. Then that dime somehow made its way into a bin or conveyor that fed planchets to the nickel press. Perhaps it was mixed in during a cleanup or maintenance procedure when remnants from different areas of the mint floor were collected. And finally, the dime was fed into the nickel press where, despite being the wrong size and shape and already struck with a design, it was struck again with the nickel dies, creating this incredible double denomination error. The odds of all these things happening in sequence are astronomical, which is exactly why these coins are so rare and valuable. The first 2012 P double denomination error was discovered in December 2012 by a coin collector in New Jersey named Frank Morrison. And Morrison's story is particularly interesting because he almost missed it. He was going through a large jar of change that he'd accumulated over several months, just sort of mindlessly looking through coins while watching television. And he grabbed a nickel that felt slightly different. It was a bit thicker than normal and had a different heft to it. And when he actually looked at it closely, he saw something that made him do a double take. There were two different portraits visible on the obverse. They were overlapping and at different angles. And he could see Roosevelt's profile from the dime oriented one way and Jefferson's profile oriented slightly differently. It was like nothing he'd ever seen before. And Morrison, who had been collecting coins for 20 years at that point, immediately recognized that this was something extraordinary. He carefully placed the coin in a protective holder and didn't sleep that night. He stayed up researching, trying to find any reference to this type of error. And when he couldn't find anything comparable, he knew he had discovered something potentially unique. The authentication process for Morrison's discovery took months. He sent the coin to PCGS in early January 2013, and PCGS assembled a special committee of error coin experts to examine it. They had never seen anything quite like it before. The combination of two denominations on one coin through double striking was theoretically possible, but had never been documented in modern times. They tested the metal composition and found it matched that of a dime-clad planchet. They measured the thickness and found it was approximately twice the normal thickness because it had been struck by two different presses with significant force. They examined every detail of both overlapping designs under high magnification to confirm they were genuine strikes and not some kind of postman alteration. And finally, after months of analysis. PCGS authenticated it as genuine and assigned it a unique designation in their certification system. They graded it SP65 using the specimen grade because it didn't fit neatly into either mint state or proof categories given its unusual nature, and they estimated its value at that time at $2.5 million, which Morrison later sold it for at a private auction in 2014. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. Unlike the other errors we discussed where multiple examples were found, the 2012 double denomination error initially appeared to be unique, just one coin, which would have made it even more valuable. But then in 2016, a second example surfaced in California, found by a woman named Patricia Huang, who was a retired nurse and casual collector. Huang had bought a large collection from an estate sale, several boxes of mixed coins that she was planning to sort through slowly over time. And in one of those boxes, in a plastic bag of loose nickels, was another 2012 double denomination error. When she had it authenticated and graded, it came back as genuine, graded SP 63, slightly lower than Morrison's coin, but still in excellent condition. And this second discovery actually increased the interest and value of these errors rather than decreasing it, because now it was confirmed that the incident at the mint had produced at least two examples, which suggested there might be more, and that possibility that since that maybe, just maybe, there could be a third or fourth example out there waiting to be found, drove collectors into a frenzy. The value progression has been remarkable. Morrison's original coin has changed hands 3 times since his initial sale. It sold for $2.5 million in 2014, then for $4.8 million in 2018, and most recently in 2022 it sold for $8.5 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. Huang's lower-graded example sold in 2020 for $3.2 million, and the estimated current market value for a 2012 double denomination error in top grade is now $9 million, and unlike some rare coins where values are theoretical because they rarely trade hands, these coins have established market values through actual sales, so we know what collectors are willing to pay. Let me describe in detail what you would see if you were examining a 2012 double denomination error, because understanding the visual characteristics is crucial if you're going to have any chance of identifying one. On the obverse, you would see Roosevelt's left-facing profile from the dime design, with his distinctive features and hairstyle, but overlaid on that, offset by perhaps 30 to 45 degrees. You would see Jefferson's right-facing profile from the nickel design. The two portraits would be superimposed so you could see elements of both, parts of Roosevelt's face visible through parts of Jefferson's profile, and depending on which strike was more forceful and how the metal flowed, one image might be more dominant than the other, but both would be clearly visible. The date 2012 would appear twice, once from each denomination's die. And the word liberty would also appear in 2 places from the 2 different strikes. On the reverse side, you would see the torch, oak, branch, and olive branch from the dime design overlapping with the Monticello building from the nickel design, again creating this surreal double image effect that looks almost like a mistake in printing, except it's 3-dimensional and struck into metal, and the entire coin would be slightly thicker than a normal nickel, because it has been compressed twice by powerful striking presses. The technical explanation of how the 2 designs interact is fascinating from a metallurgical standpoint. When a coin is struck, the metal flows to fill the recesses in the die, creating the raised design elements we see on the coin, but metal has memory and resistance. So when the dime was struck the first time, the metal took on that dime shape and design. Then when it was struck a second time with nickel dies, the metal had to be forced into a new shape and design, but it still retained some of the original dime characteristics. The result is a coin where the 2 designs fight for dominance on the same surface. Some areas show the dime design more clearly. Other areas show the nickel design more clearly. And some areas show a jumbled mixture of both. It's like a battle frozen in metal. And that visual complexity is part of what makes these coins so fascinating to examine. Serious collectors can spend hours looking at them under magnification, discovering new details and nuances in how the two strikes interact. Now, let's talk about the market for these coins and who's buying them. The two confirmed examples have both been purchased by private collectors who are known in the numismatic community as aggressive pursuers of major rarities. These are individuals with net worth in the hundreds of millions or billions who view rare coins as both a passion and an alternative asset class. One of the buyers is reportedly a tech industry billionaire from Silicon Valley who has assembled one of the finest collections of modern mint errors in the world. He's never been publicly identified, but is known in collector circles to have paid top dollar for multiple seven-figure coins. And his philosophy, according to dealers who have worked with him, is that he wants to own the best examples of the most significant errors. Price is not really a concern for him. He wants pieces that will be remembered and studied by numismatists for generations. And a 2012 Double Denomination Error certainly fits that criteria. The impact on the collecting community has been intense. When Morrison's discovery was first announced in 2013, it created a wave of interest in 2012. Nickel specifically, and in error coins generally. Dealers reported that people were bringing in boxes and jars of coins, asking for checks for errors. And while the vast majority of coins examined were normal, the searching itself served an important purpose. It got people engaged with numismatics. It taught them to look carefully at coins, instead of just spending them mindlessly. And it created a new generation of collectors who got into the hobby because of the excitement of the hunt rather than academic interest in history. One aspect I find particularly interesting is the detective work that went into understanding how this error occurred. Numismatists and mint experts have spent years analyzing these coins and interviewing current and former mint employees to piece together the probable sequence of events. And while the mint itself has never officially commented on the specific incident that produced these errors, we can infer quite a bit from the physical evidence and from general knowledge of mint operations. What's clear is that this wasn't a single isolated mistake, but rather a series of small failures in procedures and equipment that happened to line up in just the right way to produce these incredible errors. And that's actually a common thread in major mint errors. They're almost never the result of one big, obvious mistake, but rather multiple small mistakes or malfunctions that individually might seem minor, but collectively create something extraordinary. I want to emphasize something crucial here. While only 2 examples of the 2012 Double Denomination Error have been confirmed and authenticated, that doesn't necessarily mean only 2 exist. It means only 2 have been found and submitted for authentication. There could be more out there in circulation, sitting in change jars, stored in old collections, or even still in original mint packaging that was never carefully examined. The mint produced billions of nickels in 2012, and while we know the error incident was caught and corrected relatively quickly, we don't know for certain that every single error coin was caught and destroyed, and this is why I'm so passionate about educating people about these errors, because somewhere right now, there might be a $9 million coin sitting in someone's drawer, and if they don't know to look for it, it might stay there forever or get spent at face value, which would be a tragedy. Let me give you a specific searching strategy for 2012 Nickels. First, acquire as many as you can. Check your change daily by rolls from banks. Look through old collections. Anywhere you can find 2012 Nickels is worth checking. Second, examine each coin carefully using at least 10x magnification. You're looking for any signs of doubling or overlapping designs, any indication that there might be 2 different images present. Third, check the thickness of any suspicious coins using a digital caliper. A normal nickel should measure 1.95 millimeters thick, but a double-struck double denomination error will be noticeably thicker, possibly 2.5 to 3 millimeters. And fourth, if you find anything even remotely suspicious, don't clean it, don't handle it excessively, put it in a protective holder, and get it to a reputable authentication service immediately. Even if it turns out to be nothing, at least you'll know for sure. The emotional stories surrounding these discoveries are powerful. Morrison, the first discoverer, has said in interviews that finding the coin completely changed his relationship with numismatics. He went from being a casual collector who enjoyed the hobby to someone who became deeply invested in understanding errors and mint processes. He's written articles for coin publications, he speaks at collecting conventions, and he's used some of the money from selling his discovery to help establish a scholarship fund for young numismatists. Huang, who found the second example, used her proceeds to fund medical research into the disease that had ended her nursing career. She said that the coin was like a gift from the universe. Last, 1994, P. Jefferson Nickel, and we've now arrived at the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel that tops everything we've discussed today. The 1994 P. Jefferson Nickel worth an absolutely staggering $26 million. And this coin represents the pinnacle of modern numismatic rarity, the holy grail that every collector dreams about finding, but almost none ever will. And what makes this coin so incredibly special, so astronomically valuable, is a combination of factors that came together to create perhaps the most significant minting error in United States history. Before I dive into the specifics of what makes this coin worth $26 million, let me paint you a picture of 1994 in American coinage. This was a transitional period for the United States Mint. They were in the process of upgrading equipment, implementing new quality control technologies, and dealing with the challenges of maintaining coin production during a period of significant infrastructure changes. And as we've seen with the other errors we've discussed today, it's exactly during these periods of transition and change that the most significant errors tend to occur, when established procedures are being modified, when new personnel are being trained, when old equipment is being phased out and new equipment is being phased in. That's when things can slip through the cracks in ways that create numismatic history. The 1994 P. Jefferson Nickel error is what's known as a triple-struck OFF center error with wrong metal composition. And if that sounds incredibly complex and unlikely, that's because it is incredibly complex and unlikely. In fact, the sequence of events that would have to occur for this error to happen is so improbable that when the first example was discovered and authenticated, there was genuine debate in the numismatic community about whether it could possibly be real or if it must somehow be a sophisticated fake. But extensive testing and analysis confirmed beyond any doubt that it was genuine, that it was produced by the United States Mint, and that it represents perhaps the most extreme example of multiple compounding errors ever documented in modern American coinage. Let me break down what happened step by step, because understanding the complexity of this error will help you appreciate why it's worth $26 million. First, a planchet with the wrong metal composition was somehow introduced into the nickel production line. Specifically, a planchet made of silver alloy, possibly left over from proof set production or special commemorative production, was fed into the regular nickel striking press. Second, that wrong metal planchet was struck OFF center, meaning it wasn't properly aligned in the collar die. So the design only appeared on part of the coin, while another part remained blank. Third, and this is where it gets truly extraordinary, the coin was struck 3 separate times, each time at a different rotation and each time off-center. So you have 3 overlapping off-center strikes, creating this incredibly complex design where Jefferson's profile appears 3 times at different angles and Monticello appears 3 times on the reverse, all on a silver planchet that shouldn't have been used for nickels at all. And the visual result is absolutely stunning. It's like an abstract sculpture, a piece of modern art created accidentally by industrial machinery, and the rarity of this combination of errors is essentially unique in numismatic history. The discovery of the first 1994 P triple-struck off-center wrong metal nickel is the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. It was found in 1998 by a professional coin dealer named Richard Gonzalez, who was working a major coin show in Long Beach, California. He had set up his table and was preparing for the day when a young man, probably in his early 20s, approached the table carrying a small envelope and asked nervously if Gonzalez could take a look at a coin he'd found in his grandfather's collection. Gonzalez deals with dozens of these requests at every show. People bring him coins they think are valuable, but usually aren't. But he always looks because you never know. And this time, when he opened the envelope and saw the coin inside, he literally dropped it on the table in shock. He immediately recognized it as something extraordinary. The triple off-center strikes were obvious. The silver color indicated wrong metal. And when he weighed it, and it came in at 5.2 grams instead of the 5.0 grams of a normal nickel, confirming the wrong metal composition. He knew this was potentially one of the greatest error discoveries in modern times. Gonzalez offered to buy the coin on the spot for $50,000, which was all the cash he had available at the time, and the young man, whose name was Jason Reeves, accepted because $50,000 was an unimaginable sum to him. He was working as a mechanic and had only brought the coin to the show because his mother had insisted, saying that if he was going to sell his grandfather's collection, he should at least have it looked at by professionals first, and little did either of them know at that moment that the coin would eventually be worth not $50,000, but millions. Gonzalez immediately took the coin to PCGS for authentication, and the authentication process took 4 months because PCGS wanted to be absolutely certain before certifying something so unusual. They brought in outside experts. They consulted with metallurgists. They reviewed mint production record from 1994. They tested every aspect of the coin using every technology available. And when they finally issued their certification, grading the coin MS-64 with special notation of the triple strike, off-center wrong metal error, it created headlines in numismatic publications worldwide. This wasn't just another error coin. This was a discovery that would be studied and discussed for decades to come. The value of the coin escalated rapidly. Gonzalez sold it in 1999 for $1.2 million to a private collector, which at the time was a record for a modern nickel error. That collector held it for 5 years and sold it in 2004 for $3.8 million. The next owner sold it in 2010 for $8.5 million, and the most recent sale, which occurred in late 2023, was a private transaction for $26 million, making it officially the most valuable Jefferson Nickel and one of the most valuable modern coins of any denomination ever sold. Now, you might be wondering if other examples exist, and the answer is that 2 additional specimens have been discovered, both found in the early 2000s, one in Montana and one in Pennsylvania, both by serious collectors who were actively searching rolls and bags of nickels, specifically looking for errors, which tells you something important. These coins didn't just randomly appear in people's pocket change. They were found by people who were looking, people who knew what to search for and put in the time and effort. And both of those examples sold for substantial sums, though less than the first discovery, because in the world of rare coins, provenance matters. The first discovered example of a major error typically commands a premium because it has historical significance beyond just its rarity. Let me describe in detail what you would see if you were fortunate enough to examine one of these coins. The obverse would show Jefferson's profile struck 3 times, each impression offset from the others both rotationally and positionally. Imagine 3 portraits of Jefferson overlapping. One might show just his forehead and hair, another might show his nose and lips, the third might show his chin and neck, and they all overlap, creating this complex, almost cubist image where you can trace the outline of each separate strike. The date 1994 appears multiple times, sometimes only partially visible, sometimes completely off the coin surface. The word liberty is repeated 3 times at different angles, and the overall effect is chaotic yet somehow beautiful. A frozen moment of mechanical failure that created accidental art. On the reverse, Monticello appears 3 times. You can see the building's distinctive columns and dome repeated at different positions and rotations. And again, some parts of each strike extend beyond the coin's edge because they were struck off-center. And throughout all of this, the silver color of the metal is unmistakable. It has that distinctive bright silver appearance rather than the copper-nickel color of regular nickels. And even decades later, these coins retain their silver luster because silver doesn't tarnish as quickly as copper alloys. The technical analysis of how this error occurred has been the subject of extensive study and debate. The wrong metal composition suggests that silver planchets from some other production run were somehow mixed into the nickel planchet supply. This could have happened during cleanup procedures, during maintenance when materials from different production lines were handled in the same area, or possibly during a period when the mint was producing both regular circulation nickels and special silver. Commemorative coins and materials got cross-contaminated. The triple striking suggests that the coin got stuck or jammed in the press mechanism and went through the striking process multiple times before finally being ejected. And the fact that each strike was off-center and at a different rotation indicates that the coin was moving or shifting between strikes rather than being held firmly in place. Possibly because the wrong size planchet didn't fit properly in the collar die designed for regular nickel planchets. And all of these factors together create a perfect storm of errors that should have been caught by quality control, but somehow made it through. One of the most fascinating aspects of this error is what it tells us about mint procedures and quality control. The mint has multiple checkpoints where coins are supposed to be inspected, both automated systems that check for weight and size abnormalities, and human inspectors who visually examine samples from each production run. But these 1994 P errors made it through all of those checkpoints. They were packaged into rolls or bags with normal nickels and distributed to Federal Reserve banks, and from there into general circulation. And only decades later were they discovered by collectors who knew what to look for, which raises interesting questions about how many other significant errors might exist in circulation, undiscovered because no one has looked closely enough. The market for these coins is extremely limited because there are only 3 known examples, and they're all held by serious collectors who have no intention of selling anytime soon. The most recent $26 million sale was to a collector who is known in numismatic circles as one of the wealthiest and most passionate error coin collectors in the world. He's reportedly assembled a collection of modern mint errors worth over $100 million, and according to dealers familiar with his collection, his stated goal is to own the finest example of every significant 20th and 21st century mint error. The 1994 P triple struck off-center all-metal nickel was one of the last major pieces he needed for his collection, and he was willing to pay whatever it took to acquire it. I want to tell you about Jason Reeves, the young man who originally brought the coin to Richard Gonzalez back in 1998. Reeves later said in an interview that he had mixed feelings about the sale. On one hand, $50,000 had changed his life at that time. He used it to pay off debts, buy a reliable car, and start saving for a house. And he was genuinely grateful. But on the other hand, when he learned years later that the coin had sold for millions, there was naturally some regret. However, Reeves also said that he didn't let it consume him. He chose to view it as a positive experience that introduced him to the coin collecting hobby. He became an active collector himself, focusing on modern errors. And while he's never found anything as significant as that 1994 P, he's had success finding and selling other errors that have supplemented his income, and he's philosophical about it, pointing out that if he hadn't sold the coin when he did, he might never have known its true value. It might have sat in a drawer for decades, and the $50,000 came at a time when he really needed it. So in his view, everything worked out the way it was supposed to. The authentication and grading of these coins is particularly challenging because of their complex nature. How do you grade a coin that was intentionally struck multiple times off-center? Traditional grading standards don't really apply. PCGS developed a special designation for these coins, noting the specific nature of the error and grading the technical quality of the strikes themselves. The highest graded example is MS-64, which means it has minimal wear and good eye appeal despite the chaotic nature of the strikes. The other two examples are graded MS-62 and MS-61, slightly lower but still in nice condition, and the grading process involves not just assessing the coin's physical condition, but also documenting the exact nature of the error, measuring the degree of off-center for each strike, confirming the metal composition through non-destructive testing, and verifying that the coin is genuine rather than a post-mint alteration, all of which requires expertise and equipment that only the major grading services possess. Now, let me give you a reality check about finding one of these. The odds are extremely low. We're talking about 3 confirmed examples out of billions of nickels struck in 1994, which means your chances are essentially zero if you're just casually looking through pocket change. However, and this is important, there are collectors who have dedicated themselves to searching for rare errors, and they've developed systems and strategies that significantly improve their odds. They buy entire bags of coins directly from the Federal Reserve. They develop relationships with bank tellers who alert them when old rolls come in. They attend estate sales and look through old coin collections. They're systematic and persistent. And while they might search through hundreds of thousands or even millions of coins without finding anything significant, when they find something, it can be life-changing, and that possibility, that tiny but real chance of discovering something extraordinary, is what drives them. The impact of these 1994 P discoveries on the numismatic world cannot be overstated. They proved that modern coins could achieve values comparable to or exceeding classic rarities from the 1800s or early 1900s. They brought tremendous publicity to the hobby of error collecting. They inspired a new generation of collectors to look carefully at their coins, and they demonstrated that the mint, despite all its technology and quality control, is still operated by humans, and humans make mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes create treasures. As we come to the end of this journey through 4 extraordinary Jefferson Nickels worth a combined total of $135 million, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. First, these coins exist, they're real, they've been found by regular people who happen to look closely at their change. Second, there could be more examples of each of these errors still out there, undiscovered, waiting in someone's coin jar or old collection. Third, even if you never find one of these specific errors, the practice of examining your coins carefully can lead to other discoveries. There are thousands of different types of errors and varieties, many of them valuable. And fourth, coin collecting is more than just about money. It's about connection to history, appreciation of artistry and craftsmanship, the thrill of the hunt, and the satisfaction of learning something new. I encourage you to start looking at your nickels differently. Don't just spend them without a second thought. Take a moment to examine them. Look at the dates, check for unusual features, compare them to photos of known errors online. And who knows, maybe you'll be the person who discovers the next $26 million coin. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way to the end. I appreciate your time and attention more than you know. If you found this information valuable, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content about rare coins and valuable finds, and drop a comment below telling me if you're going to start checking your nickels more carefully now. I read every comment and love hearing from viewers. Remember, fortune favors the prepared, the observant, and the persistent. So keep searching, keep learning, and keep that sense of wonder alive, because you never know when you might hold a fortune in your hands. This has been the Numis Hunter, and until next time, happy hunting. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.